So we've established our basic definitions now. We've said that psychology is a science and that it's concerned with behaviour. You may be wondering why it's important that we care about psychology being a science. Why can't psychology just be about helping people and talking to them about their problems? As we alluded to in the last section, trying to do something applied without understanding the rules of the systems we're operating in can lead to really bad outcomes. For a trivial example, think about playing a sport without understanding the rules. Or more seriously, conducting heart bypass without knowing how the circulatory system works or how to maintain good anaesthesia. In some situations, this might mean that we just don't help people as much as we'd like to and their symptoms don't improve. But in the worst case, we could have adverse outcomes and make things substantially worse by not understanding what we're doing. This applies to the clinical context, of course, but also applies to other applications of our psychological discipline, like understanding the likelihood of recidivism, or how we make decisions about rehabilitation for offenders, or in an area which personally interests me, finding ways to help people make better health choices. Let's stop being so abstract for a second and give you a concrete example. I'm a dog person, so I believe that having a dog improves my quality of life. That being the case, there might be value in providing every Australian household with a dog in order to improve quality of life and prevent disability due to depression and anxiety. But we need to know if that works for everyone and if there are any possible bad outcomes from giving everyone a dog. So before we do that, we should conduct a study, giving a set of people dogs and a set of people a control animal, maybe a rabbit, and see if the dog group do get better with comparison to the control group. Not a perfect study by any means, but it sets a framework of how we answer questions and therefore understand how we can be better informed about the help we provide. The same principles apply to how we evaluate treatments for depression, anxiety, substance use disorders, and to be honest, how we should evaluate pretty much everything in the world that's based on reality rather than preference or values. So to summarise, psychology aims to help us understand the way that we operate and respond to the environment so we can make informed choices about how to improve the world through better therapy, better risk assessment, better public health programs, better functioning judicial systems, and so on. But no science is an island. Every science is related to every other science. We can talk about how certain sciences exist as applications of other sciences. Astronomy is applied physics, and chemistry is an application of physics or physical principles. This is often used as a way to talk down about certain areas of inquiry, about how certain disciplines are less pure than others and therefore less valuable. But that's a really bad way of thinking about the relationship between sciences. After all, if you wanted to be able to predict when high tide was coming so you could go surfing, you wouldn't start by working out how water molecules interact. That's horribly inefficient. We need to draw boundaries about what is and isn't in our area, and then be mindful about how other sciences can help us explain our little area of interest. What does this have to do with the foundations of human behaviour? Really, what I want to emphasise is that the foundations of human behaviour are fundamentally biological. For some of you, that could seem really obvious and mundane, and for others that might seem a little bit unintuitive or odd. After all, we don't do our work in the same way that most biologists do. Nonetheless, what we're interested in as psychologists is a particular set of characteristics about living organisms, typically humans, and as a consequence of that, it's quite reasonable to describe psychology as applied biology. So what difference does that make? Well, it means that we need to keep in mind that our attempts to explain behaviour are biologically plausible. That means that irrespective of whether they intuitively make sense, they need to be consistent with biological matter that we're made up of and the processes that govern them. We'll learn more about this from week 4. An explanation of human behaviour can't be true if it requires that we're all telepathic. In the same way, our explanations need to be sensible within the confines of what our feeble flesh can handle. It also means that we can rely upon the work that biologists have done before us to start our explanations of behaviour. This means zoologists, ecologists, and probably the most famous biologist of all time, Charles Darwin, and his lesser-known contemporary, Alfred Russel Wallace. In the words of noted Orthodox Christian and biologist Theodosius Dobzhansky, nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. Accordingly, our models of psychology are mindful of the process of evolution. And if this statement troubles you in any way, please see the link here and I'll discuss this a little bit more. Finally, and implicitly linked to the other points, is that being applied biology encourages us to think about how animal models, like Pavlov's dogs, Skinner's pigeons and rats and so on, can help us make progress in our study of psychology. That's not to say that there aren't big differences between humans and rats, for argument's sake, or that there aren't ethical complexities with doing lab research, in particular with animals, but they nonetheless can be and are very important to helping us make discoveries in psychology. So we've learned more about why it's useful to treat psychology as a science, how the science of psychology relates to the practice of psychology, where psychology sits with respect to other sciences, and why it's useful and not cheapening to think of psychology as applied biology. Along with what we covered in the last video, these are really the key aspects we needed to cover this week. And so for the balance of this week, what we're going to focus on is explaining a little bit more about what we do and where this sits within the broader discipline of psychology.